You'll still be the same person, so
I know.
it's fine.
Thank you. Okay, so it should say that we're live streaming. We have 58 registered, but I'm going to go ahead and let everyone in, and then Jacinta, I'll let you be in charge of it moving forward.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. We are going to get started in just a minute. Let everyone come in. I want to remind people to be on mute, and we'll. And if you need to unmute at time for being prompted, Sika will let you know the time to do that. A couple of just really quick things before I turn it over officially to Sika to get started is one, this session is being recorded. It's actually being live streamed on our YouTube channel right now. And we are going to ask that you hold questions until the end when we discuss them. But every question that you want to ask, we are going to ask that you put it in the chat. That way we can create a record of all the questions that have been asked at yesterday's TA session as well as today's TA session, and create a written record of that. So for anyone who was unable to participate, will have the opportunity. And with that, I will turn it over to Sika.
Good morning, everyone. We are so glad that you are with us this morning. As Holly said, this is the second of our technical assistance RFP reviews for our summer funding that will start on June 1st. Please, please, please feel free to ask questions because this is new, not only for you, but for us. We are very, very excited to be offering this opportunity to help with summer programming here in Leon County. And so just listen in. Know that a lot of your questions will probably be answered as Holly moves through. However, please go ahead and put them in the chat. And if you will, be sure to put them so that everyone can see them. Once Holly finishes, we will have an opportunity where I'll go through those questions. We'll get them answered. We also will transcribe the questions and have those available on our website. So with that, I will turn it back over to Holly.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sika. And I want to just welcome everyone again. I am going to dive right in. I'm going to be sharing everything on my screen. And please note, every single thing that is shared is available on our website currently. So the first place that I'll start is just how you access the actual funding announcement. So if you go straight to our website, cscleon.org, there's a couple of ways to access the information. First and foremost, right here, for now anyhow, we have our latest news and our funding announcement. So you can just click on that and it'll take you to information all about the funding announcement. And all of the information that you'll read here is included in the actual application and funding announcement that I'll show you. So just know that there's not information here that's not also elsewhere, but it is repurposed here just for access purposes. Up here at the top, you'll see where it says, here's the summer funding announcement, and you just click here. Now, what this is going to do is take you to where we will be hosting all of our funding announcements, not only this one, but any ones that we have in the future. So before I click on it, I just want to say that clicking here is actually going to take you up under news into funding announcements right there. So both of these will go to the exact same place. You come in here and you'll actually see all of our previous funding announcements or even requests for information. Right now, the only one that is open is the summer 22 funding announcement and all of the details associated with it. I want to start off by just reiterating that this particular funding announcement is for summer only. So we fully intend, the council, the staff, the team, we fully intend to have additional funding opportunities for longer term impact programs or sustained support for programs, but that's planned for the future. This particular funding announcement truly is designed to expand the capacity of existing programs only to better meet the needs of children, youth, and families in Leon County during the summer. Because of that, we are expecting to do a one-time allocation associated with these grants on June 1st, with the expectation that funds be expended by August 30th. That is a 3-month window. So that's truly what the grant application that you should be applying for is, for those 3 months only. The other thing that I want to point out is just that there are kind of 3 minimum requirements for any entity that wants to make a proposal. The first one is that the proposal must align directly with at least one of the CSC Leon priority areas, and there's 8 of those. Those priority areas were published last summer near the beginning of the council's inception, and they have not changed. There are definitely some areas that we have kind of dived a little bit deeper into, and we'll show some of those examples as we go. But just know that whatever you propose must align with at least one of those priority areas, again, to expand the capacity of existing services to better meet the needs of children, youth, and families. So that's that second piece, is that it's an expansion. The CSC is prohibited from supplanting or duplicating funding. So as we go through this process and talk about how you show your budget and your request, we're going to ask that you show how it's not supplanting or replacing funding that you might already have through a different grant source. And then the final and third piece, and this is where it might feel a little bit different from other types of funding opportunities, is that you will have to show how your organization has the infrastructure capable of collecting data to demonstrate program impact. Now, oftentimes we've been receiving questions, what does that mean? How is that like what if we don't have data collection capacity? Our organization is committed to your success. So please know that you'll have the opportunity to request not only technical assistance for key pieces of this application process, but also if you are to receive an award and you need additional assistance, you're able to indicate that, because we don't want to just issue a grant award or make a community investment rather, and see you fail. We are just as committed to your success as you are committed to your success. So know that we are partners in this as we move along, all committed to the same reason of improving services for children, youth, and families. Finally, the last thing I'll point out before going into all of the resources that we have available for you is that this is a short turnaround. We recognize that 21 days from publication to proposal completion or submission is not a very long time. We recognize that, and that's why we were hoping that while we've had a couple of other webinars previously to try to be anticipatory of this funding announcement coming forward. This was specifically determined by the council so that we can have at least some investment that we're making this summer. So yes, we recognize that it is a short turnaround time, but again, we are here and we're trying to be as transparent as possible, and we hope that we've made the application process as simple as possible. So with that said, what I'll show you are all of the resources we have available. So the first thing that I want to guide you through is to download the full funding announcement. I want to recommend that you start with that you read it, and that you understand what's contained in it. And we have a breakdown in this, and it's about a 5-page document, and I actually have it up. Here we go. I can just get a thumbs up from, that's the wrong one. A thumbs up from someone in the audience if they see the page. Thank you. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. There we go. In this application, we've tried to keep it as simple as possible, and it does have a section in there where it breaks down bullet by bullet everything that you will need for your application. It will reference where there's other resources and tools available to you, and I'll show you exactly where to find all of those so that you have everything that you need to move forward. The application starts with that overview, which I've kind of already provided for you, but I will say that here is the 8 priority areas that we mentioned. So this covers quite literally everything from cradle to career for families, children, and youth. And you can find definitions of each of those in the work that we've done previously. I can point to those and make sure that they're available in the resource section. The second piece that I want to bring to your attention is the eligibility and scope of services. So the first thing is to point out is that any entity is eligible to apply for this funding, any entity at all. And what that means is that, say, if you've already previously received funding from other funding entities, you're not precluded from applying. If you are not a nonprofit, you are not precluded from applying. It quite literally is any entity that has an existing service provision that it has an identified need and wants to fill that need for this summer only. We've included a couple of examples to try to kind of show what that means by an expansion of services. You'll hear us going over several examples during this webinar to help you best understand that. And the one that we've included in the application, yes, it's related to childcare. That's not because this funding is limited to childcare, but it is just a very easy example to kind of demonstrate what we mean. And that is, say you have a program and you're currently scheduled to serve 10 children over the summer, but what you really want to do is serve 20 children, you just don't have funding for the other 10. You show us that you have the capacity in the current budget to serve the current 10, and then you're asking for the proposal for the additional 10, and that is what we could fund. That would be, could be an accepted application for consideration. Some other examples might be offering scholarships for summer camp. Maybe it's a summer camp that is fully funded, but you've noticed that there's a need for some mental health specialists for the population that you serve, and you'd love to bring on that additional position during the summer. That could be an enhancement or an expansion of capacity for your current services. Maybe it's to fund transportation costs to better connect families to services. Or if you are a type of organization that brings the services to the individuals and the entities in their home that you're wanting to, or into the neighborhood that you're wanting to fund like an additional mobile unit, or you want to fund, you need some support to bring technology into the mix of what you're doing so that you can better deliver services or streamline services that thereby increases your capacity to serve those families better. So it really is an opportunity to get a little bit on the innovative side, this idea of what could I do to make our current service provision better, stronger, more efficient for the families that we serve if you had a little extra money for the summer only. I want to point out that this list is not exhaustive. And so if you have the chance to go and listen to yesterday's call on our YouTube channel, you'll see that several people asked for some examples, and that's perfectly acceptable. If you want to go and look through those, or if you want to pop some questions in at the end of today's session, we'll be able to kind of walk through some of those. The other thing that I also want to point out is that we will be awarding extra points for 3 different things. One is for any entity that demonstrates collaboration with partners and that the primary applicant is coming in as an intermediary. So what we mean by that is applying on behalf of multiple parties that exist in the community already. What this does not mean is that the more partners you have, the more points you get. So it's just 2 or more. If you're partnering and showing collaboration, that is something that we will be rewarding with extra points. In addition, the council has identified 3 areas that they want to kind of prioritize, and that is any expansion of services that will help better connect families and youth to mental health, workforce development, or legal services. We hosted several focus groups, community forums, provider forums, and during these 3 issues consistently came up, especially for families and our older youth, really middle school and high school. So what we are prioritizing through the use of extra points is a better connection to services for mental health, workforce development, and legal services. And finally, the third thing that we will award extra points for is anything in any proposal that will target inequities through the use of technology, home-based, or mobile delivery of services. Now, I mentioned that earlier in talking through those kind of different bullets of some suggestions. And this is truly the phrase that we use internally, and really I'm going to coin it for Sika, is when you can't bring Muhammad to the mountain, sometimes you got to take the mountain to Muhammad. And thinking through that has really kind of centered some of our discussions on how we can better connect families to services. I think that through COVID, what we have discovered is that a lot of people were not able to access services via transportation. Those organizations that had the capacity or the funding to implement technology or home-based or mobile delivery of services seemed to fare better, but not all programs had access to that. So if that's something that during COVID, you were like, if only we had some funding that could do this, this is a great opportunity to explore that in your proposal to the CSC. Now, I'm going to go into some of the technical requirements. We're going to walk through the entire application and be very clear about what's expected and what's not. When we conclude, I'll turn it back over to Sika to review those questions. So again, I just want to reiterate for any of those of you who joined a little bit later, that you please drop your questions in the chat as we go so that we can make sure that everything's covered. It might get covered in the next 10 minutes that we're working, that I'm going through all of this, but then we can just reiterate it so we have that written record of any questions that someone might have. So the technical pieces are, one, that the applications must be submitted in our online system. Two, they must be received in the online system by Saturday, May 14th at 5 p.m. I know that's an awkward time on a Saturday, but if you couldn't quite finish it on your Friday work week, we're definitely giving that extra time on Saturday to get those in. However, we also understand that technology can sometimes be a barrier. So if you are experiencing some sort of technical difficulty, please email info@cscleon.org no later than the Friday before it's due so that we can troubleshoot with you to make sure that access to the internet is not the reason why you're not able to get a proposal in. The next thing I'll share is that there are technically, there are 6 pages of the full application, and what it includes is a detailed program narrative, an organizational profile, a budget, and proposed list of funding deliverables. There'll also be a section for just an attestation that you're equating that everything is submitted is right and all of that. Okay, so I'm going to scroll down. Now on this page, I've started with program narrative because it's in essence the most important and it's valued at the most. When you submit your application, it'll actually be the second page. The first page will be the organizational profile. But I want to start with the program narrative because it is the most comprehensive part. The first thing that we'll ask you for is a program description of your current services. Right? We want to know specifically what you do now. This is not the proposed, but like, what is it that you do now, you were designed to do, et cetera. We also then will ask about the population description of who is currently served. We'll ask you to include zip codes of where that service provision is at, and just kind of a brief profile of who it is that you're serving currently. We're also going to ask you to reference any quality standards or evidence-based practices associated with your current services. Now, if you're not currently using quality standards or evidence-based practices, that's okay. You can just put in A. What we're trying to equate there is just understanding the assets that we have currently in our community. And this information is just going to help us continue to grow the cadre of services available to children, youth, and families here in Leon County. After you do that, that's when we're going to ask you to identify the needs or the gaps in your current service. So you'll have a section dedicated to this is the problem. But then we're going to say, what is your proposed expansion solution? We love it. We know that there are are lots of gaps within programs or there's opportunities to expand capacity. But we want to hear from you what your innovative approach to addressing that capacity issue is, or to address that gap. So then you get to describe that proposed solution. Then we're going to ask about the target population of that expansion. We are going to ask you to describe in detail what neighborhoods you plan to serve, and if that aligns with our targeted areas that we really want to focus on. And I will point you to a resource that shows you exactly what those zip codes are for each of the priority areas. Then the last part of this program narrative section is going to ask you to talk about proposed data collection methods and tools and a description of expected impact. And I starred these because we have resources to help you with that. And you can indicate even in your application, while I've prepared this proposal, this is what we want to do, I am going to need technical assistance to help do that. And I just want to point out, when you're going through the application and it asks you, do you need technical assistance for this section? You'll see underneath it that it says, this item is not scored. Answering yes, that you want technical assistance to collect data and demonstrate impact will not in any way, shape, or form negatively impact your application. Leaving these sections blank or saying, I don't know, will negatively impact your proposal. So we want to walk through and make sure that you have the tools available to you. So I'm going to pause right here and I'm going to toggle back to our announcement page on our website, because the resource that we mentioned in that italics right there can be found right here under this resources. If you click on key outcomes and measures, it's going to download a Excel database, and I'm going to pop it up on the screen, that looks like this. This is a lot, and we recognize that it is a lot. So we actually have a webinar available on our YouTube channel that walks through how you can use this tool. We have 3 main buckets of success in school and life that has 2 of our subdomains of school readiness and school age supports listed under there. On this tab, you'll find healthy children, youth, and families with more of our constructs and our subdomains listed under there, including mental health and physical health and some others. And then finally, we have the safe neighborhoods, safe and nurturing families and communities. And then we have 4 more subdomains under there: youth development, food stability, housing stability, and enhanced supports for caregivers. Now, how you use this is basically, if you say, we have identified with youth development, that's our primary area, then looking under here, you'll see where we've prioritized 2 constructs that we want to associate with impact. So it's looking through, okay, I can collect some of this information or this data and that be my proposed outcomes. So that's what we want to point out. I'm not going to dive into how to use this tool in fullness during this webinar. Again, it is something that you can find on our YouTube channel, and I'll make sure that I update the list of resource links to include a direct link so you don't have to go searching for it in all of our YouTube videos, because all of our council meetings are also on that page. So it might take a minute to kind of scroll through and find. So I'll post that link for everyone so it's easily accessible. And of course, if you are needing technical assistance, I'm going to show you how you can indicate that as we move forward. With that, I'm going to go back to this page and to our funding, to our funding announcement, and move on to the second area, which is going to be the organizational profile. This is where we're going to ask you for some brief information about your organization, who you are, how do we contact you, things like that, and some information about the applicant entity. So vision, mission, history of service. Again, we want to just reiterate that this funding is not to pilot new or test new services or new programs. This is for entities that have a demonstrated history of service provision, so that we can build the capacity, because it is a short-term investment. Again, I just want to point out for any of those who came in late that we will fully intend to have longer term support and sustained support funding opportunities in the future. This particular grant is not for that. This particular funding opportunity is specifically for existing programs to expand capacity of service. So we'll also, in the application, ask you to upload several things. One, we need an organizational chart. If you need help with that, let us know. If you are applying on behalf of a group as an intermediary, we want to see the organizational chart of how your entity collaborates with those entities. What does that relationship look like? We'll also ask you for proof of your division of corporations business registration. So that's your SunBiz registration, and that you are active and not like overdue or past due or any of that stuff, that you are in active status in SunBiz. If you're a nonprofit, we will request your nonprofit status determination letter from the federal government. We'll also ask for you to provide a certificate of insurance or proof of liability coverage. If you are selected for funding, you will be required to add the Children's Services Council of Leon County as one of those named covered entities in your application, or excuse me, in your certificate of insurance. Clearly, you don't need to do that yet, but there will be a time that you might need to add that should you be selected for funding. And then finally, some letters of agreement from each collaborating organization. Again, this is going to be as applicable. If you are applying on behalf of a collaborative, then having proof of that support is what we're asking for in those letters of agreement. You do not need that proof. If you are not applying, let me rephrase that. If you are not applying as intermediary, then you do not need to put anything in this section. All right, the third section is going to be the budget section. Now I want to spend some time here and first start with knowing what your fiscal year is. We almost included a question that was like, identify your fiscal year, but we just said, just make sure that you have coverage for July to June. So the CSC Leon's fiscal year is October 1st through September 30th. But we know that that's not everybody else's. Your fiscal year may be January 1 to December 31st. It may be July 1 through June 30. What we're asking for in this section is going to be a copy of your current operational budget without the expansion, without the whatever it is that you're asking for. And we want to make this super easy. Just however you do your budget, whatever it is that you maintain, we just want you to submit that, PDF it, attach it, there you go. Now, if your fiscal year is July 1 to June 30th, we're going to ask you to submit two budgets, right? So, because we'll want your 21-22 budget that covers the first month of the expansion services, and then we'll want your next budget, so that I guess that would be your 22-23 budget that would cover the first 2 months of this budget period. In essence, what we want to see is what are your current operational budget for the time that you are seeking funding for. It needs to cover June through August 30th. Now, I have worked with some entities who do who have just expanded it and say, oh, we work on a 12-month budget, but in between we sometimes do a 2-month extension, so it's more like a 14-month budget. If that's what you want to do and that's your normal protocol, by all means, that's acceptable. So just know that what we want to see in that current operational budget is covering from June 1st to August 30th. The second thing that we're going to ask for is what is that proposed expansion budget? This is really so that we can kind of see, without us, this is what they're doing. With us, this is what the plan is. And we need to be able to keep them separate. Again, I'm going to reiterate that this is because statutorily the CSC is prohibited from supplanting or duplicating funding. That's why we need to show that this is on top of anything that you have done previously. Now you'll see here, again, there is a note that talks about things that are coming or just options for technical assistance. So I want to just, again, show you where you can find those resources that are referenced. come back to the announcements page under our summer funding announcement, scroll down to resources, and here you will see sample budget worksheet. If you click on that, it's going to open, or it's going to prompt you to download a Excel file. I'm going to pull that up on our screen now. Can I just get a thumbs up if it's showing the budget and not something else? Thank you, Fika. This is what we have here is set up just for you. This is the open one for you to put in what you're asking for. Now, we have tried to cover every potential line item that might exist, because that's going to be helpful for us for kind of determining where we're spending the funding rather. And so we do ask that for the expansion budget only that you plan to use this worksheet. I want to comment that the reason why we have these other columns here is because some of our entities that we've talked to have expressed, well, I don't have a normal budget worksheet. So we wanted to provide this, that if you don't already have a budget worksheet for your current operational, that this is a tool that you could use. You could use it for everything to submit current operational as well as the expansion, as long as we put it there both twice. But this is what we're asking for the expansion part of it. The other thing that I'll just point out is that it's got some cool little features built into it. And that is down here, especially for staff, we just came up with some sample ideas of what your staff titles might be. And I just realized that this must be really, really small for you guys. So let me see if I can increase it. Give me just a second. I should have thought about that sooner. Okay, so these are just idea, like we randomly put in titles of positions. You might not have these, that's perfectly fine. You can replace them, right? You can just kind of type into this and, say camp counselor, for example. Whatever you want to do is totally however you want to put that in there. But as you put stuff in there, let's just say that your project manager for the 3-month period, I'm going to use easy math as $100. You'll see up here that it automatically populates, and it's also going to automatically populate your FICA, which is your employment tax that you have to pay. And as you add additional people, so maybe you're going to take a percentage for your executive director. Maybe that's just $5. Maybe what you're really going to do is add an entire data entry person, and that's going to be even more money. Again, I'm just using random dollars here. None of this is to be exact, but you'll see that it all tallies up automatically for you and helps calculate that. So it's all set up for you. Again, you can download this directly from our website. Save it onto your computer and manipulate it however you want. And then when we come back into the actual application, you'll be able to upload it directly into the system. The almost last part of the application, so this is the second to last part of the application, is the funding deliverable section. Now in this section, this is where we're talking about demonstrating program impact. Now, what we're going to ask you to do is suggest contract deliverables. And I want to take you to one more resource for those potential contract deliverables. Again,
Holly, you're on mute.
Oh, I have no idea how that happened.
You missed the last sentence.
Okay, thank you. So I'll go back in the funding deliverables section. That's so weird. In the funding deliverables section, we're asking for is for you to provide a list of suggested contract deliverables to designate program impact. And what we mean by that is, what are you going to be held to in your final report to report back to us? So like we said, the funding is from June 1st to August 30th. You'll have 2 weeks after that to submit your final report, as well as return any dollars that were not expended during the time period. That report, and this will all be stipulated in your contract, will of course include some certain fiscal measures to know how the money was spent. Was it spent on what you said it would be spent on? And then what were those outcomes? Maybe it's the number of children served. Maybe it's the number of parents who demonstrated learning gains. But this is where we want to talk through, and why this section is so important is because it shouldn't just be outputs. We want to help you move from outputs to outcomes, because that's truly how you measure impact. So again, we have a resource available for you. Go back to the funding announcements page right underneath here. It says funding options A. If you click on that, it's going to open this document. This is the exact document that was placed in front of our council members during our last meeting. And this comes from our research firm that helped us do our preliminary gap analysis to inform where we might want to prioritize funding for the summer. That full gap analysis and needs assessment will be published for the community in June, but they did do kind of a stepped approach so that we could start looking at what the data was telling us and giving us some options for how we might want to proceed. If you scroll through this document, you'll find information related to every single one of the 8 priority areas that we identified earlier. And you'll also see where they recommended specific interventions by domain. In this, yes, there's information that talks about the identified gaps and short-term investments. I want to bring your attention to 2 of the columns, and that is this column right here that I'm the last one that I'm highlighting. Technically, it's the 4th column. This is the population column. This is going to show where they recommended we prioritize funding by zip code or by special populations. So that's something just to keep in mind as you're thinking through where you want to target your particular expansion. Know that this list is also going to be at the disposal of our evaluators. So when you're thinking about proposed expansion, does it align with where we know that there's need? The other thing that I want to bring your attention to is this column here. That one up there, it only highlighted the one. This column for every domain is going to provide suggestions on what you might be able to accomplish, an expected program impact. This is going to be helpful for your program narrative section and helpful for your funding deliverable section. If you look through each of these and say that you're wanting to increase the number and percent of children demonstrating improvement in the development of school readiness skills, then we would then go to that key outcomes and measures report, look at the tools that are associated with that, choose which tool that you want to use, make sure that you know how to use it, you have the capacity to use it, and then you can include it in the deliverable section that you might do a pre-post application survey of that. You might choose to use a screening tool and then track how many of those families got connected to services. Those are the types of things that you can explore. And we have, as I said, one of these pages for every single one of the domains in our system: physical health, mental health, youth development, all the way down to enhanced supports for caregivers. You can ignore pages 13 and 14. That's more internal capacity for us, but public records. So by all means, you can peruse that and see all the other areas that were recommended by our research firm. So I just want to go back to the top of that. And yesterday a question was asked, so I just want to go ahead and say it here as well. The estimated costs that are here is just what research showed us is the average cost for things. These might not be your costs, and these costs will not dictate what we fund. I think Asika said it best yesterday when we might say here that it's $600 I think it was $200 a child per week. Maybe your real costs are only $160, or maybe your real costs are $210. Use what your real costs are, and not what these estimated costs here. These were just provided to us to help us just have a better idea. With that, I'm going to go back to, sorry for jumping around, to the funding announcement. Now, the last part that that's going to be in the application is the attestation section. This section is basically letting you know we expect that we're going to receive a high volume of funding proposals, and we may not be able to cover all funding requests. The council did cap the total available funds at $2 million. And we're hoping that the applications that come in are mindful of what their current capacity, what their current budget is, and what they're asking for an expansion of services for just 3 months. And the council remains very committed to making the best use of these resources. However, they may choose not to fund you, or they may choose to say, hey, you asked for $100, we can give you 50. Is that something that you're willing to do? Now, we also understand that when you make your proposal, those lists of expected outcomes are going to be based on the full amount that you've requested. So once you receive that determination of funding, you'll have the opportunity to either decline the opportunity if it's lower than what you proposed, or to make an adjustment to your proposal of expected outcomes, but that will happen during the contracting period. You'll have that will kind of be built into that should you be chosen for funding. So that last section in the application is reiterating this point, making sure you understand that, and then asking you to sign and date to not only attest that you understand that, but also that everything else in the application is accurate and true to the best of your knowledge. So before we open it up for questions, I'll just quickly review the scoring criteria, which you'll see is almost identical to all of the bullets that we just put, but these are going to be in the order that the application comes in. The organizational profile is up to 10 points. The program narrative, like I said, is the most valuable section. That is worth up to 40 points. The budget is worth up to 25 points. The proposed funding deliverables, 15 points. And then those special designations that we talked about at the very beginning, those 3 areas, is going to be worth up to 10 points. We expect to have everything in and evaluated and scored in time for our Thursday, May 19th meeting. That will be a public meeting. You can either come in person. We'll be at the Leon County Commission Chambers on the 5th floor of the Leon County Courthouse at 2 p.m. Or you can catch it on the live stream via YouTube and kind of be informed of what's happening before that. Or if you miss it, that's perfectly fine. We will be notifying all applicants selected for funding no later than Friday, May 20th to discuss the contracting and billing process. The timeline is listed here for you. There will be a very tight turnaround in that contracting period to make sure everything gets sorted. It is our goal to disperse the funds on June 1st or as close to there as possible so that you can begin providing those services. Again, the services close or all the funds are expected to be spent by August 30th, and then your final report back to the CSC by September 15th. The only last thing that I will just kind of mention is that under no circumstances should you contact a member of the team or a council member to lobby or communicate that your proposal should be accepted or where they're at in the review process. All of them will be shared with council members once the closing date happens, as well as our team, our panel of community impact volunteers, and then they will be scored. If you're experiencing technical difficulties, of course, you can follow those guidelines that we mentioned earlier by emailing info@cscleon.org. And the final thing that I'll mention is by noon tomorrow, under that resource page, we will have the list of the FAQs that were posted, asked yesterday, as well as today. That will be on the website. And then a couple of other tools will be posted there as well. So I'm going to quickly go back to it and just tell you what's to come. Right here where these say register, they'll switch to view so that you can access the recordings, and then right underneath that will be the list of frequently asked questions. Right underneath that will be a request for TA for the application process, so that you can send, like, you can click into it. It's a quick survey. You give information and you say, I need help with this, this, and this. And then a member of our team can contact you to help walk through that. All of that will be public record in terms of it inaccessible to anybody who wants it. The final thing that I'll show you very quickly and give you one more resource that's to come is that when you are ready to apply online, you come back to this page and you click apply online. It will take you into the portal. I think that it's already can tell that I've been here, because it really should be taking you to this page, which is just our overview page. Again, everything that's listed here is listed in that download full announcement document. There's nothing extra that's here, and there's nothing missing from that other document. You progress forward, and then you'll start the actual application process. Now, the one thing that you should know is that you do not have the ability to save your progress, log out, and log back in. If you leave your browser open, it will save as you go, and you can toggle forward and backward once you've at least done the page that you're on. You can put information here and go to the next page. So for example, I could just put, if you wanted to kind of just fast forward to kind of see the next phase, I'd have to grab files, and then you could hit next. If it's not done, it'll say, nope, requires an answer. So you see where it makes you fill things in. So what we are doing is preparing an actual document that you'll see here that will be up on the website that will give you all of the items. And what we're going to recommend for you is to think through the questions and have them in a copy paste format so that you're able to put them directly into the application as you move forward. Most of the fields are like that looks like this. These ones are all what we call short form fields. Some of them will require validation. So that's why it says like this is the format that it's going to require from you. But when you get to this one, this looks like it's the same size field, but trust me when I say it's not. It has many, many characters and can accommodate a very robust answer. What it cannot accommodate is graphs or images or things like that. It is a text-only field. So if you have information that's out there, or even when you're explaining something, when we get to the target population, if you have a table or something like that, that's not going to transfer over. It is a straight copy and paste function. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing and bring Sika back up to the front with us. And here's the time that we'll open it up for questions.
All right, so we've got several questions in the chat, most of which I did answer in the chat, but I do want to verbally answer those, especially since I've now been introduced to a new tool to help with live transcription. So the first question is, can services be available to youth that live in surrounding counties that may travel to Leon County for various summer programs? And the answer to that is these funds are for youth who reside in Leon County. So you'll need to be able to show the number of youth who live in Leon County for which you can expand the program. And then whatever other funding you have to be able to support youth from outside of Leon County is totally up to you. So again, remember that these funds are for children, youth, and families that reside in Leon County. The next question, how much funding is available overall? That's $2 million that's been approved by the council. How will awards be made? What is the range? So you will submit not only your operating budget, but also your proposed program budget for the expansion. Our evaluators will review that. In some cases, we may be able to fund the whole amount, but the council does reserve the right to not do full funding. At that time, you can decide whether you can adjust accordingly, or you can decide that maybe it's not funding that you want to move forward with. That being said, depending on what the outcome, our thought process is that we're going to try to fund as many programs as possible. The next question, proof of, so the question was about certificate of insurance and proof of liability, and would a nonprofit D&O, and that's directors and officers, for those who don't know, insurance be sufficient? The answer to that is no, because D&O insurance only covers your directors and officers. So that would be your executive director, if you've covered the second in charge, the chair of your board, and all of your, our chairperson, all of your board members, in case something happens. If you are operating without liability insurance, you are putting yourself at risk. So there are several insurance agencies in town. You can call any one of them and ask them to price out liability coverage for you. Especially if you are working with youth, you need liability coverage so that you are covered in case something happens. And then if you are awarded, CSC is going to ask that you add us as one of the insured for the period of your grant. So again, if you have any questions about that, please email info@cscleon.org. We can help you get connected with insurance providers in the city that can help you with that. Next question, does CSC Leon include LGBTQIA+ and communities of color in its definition of vulnerable populations? So what we say and what we do is look at funding programs that will have a positive impact on children, youth, and families. In the needs assessment information that you see there under the funding options, you will see certain zip codes because the needs assessment is already showing us that there are vulnerable populations in those zip codes. That being said, if your program funds LGBTQIA+, persons of color, women, whatever it might be, then that is the structure of your program. But keep in mind that in the funding recommendations, there is an emphasis on the vulnerable populations in specific zip codes in Leon County. So you just want to take that into consideration as you do your application and your programming.
If I could just add to that, in the needs assessment and the ITN, which is a list of definitions that will be part of that, those resources that defines youth, we did in that document, throughout this needs assessment process, did include LGBTQ, TIA, and communities of color as part of our vulnerable population. So while it might not have surfaced thus far in our initial gap analysis, that was in fact part of our intention.
So to see that, you can go back to the website, and if you go under funding announcements, which is where you would find this RFP, if you go under the ITN, you can see the full ITN for the needs assessment and see those definitions, because that's not something you're going to see on the RFP click.
Perfect.
Hold on. Okay,
sorry,
next question. That's okay, Holly. Next question. Is it expected, because questions are popping in, so it's moving my chat. Okay. Is it expected for the summer program to run through the entire summer? The answer is no. Your program is your program. So you would request funding and show us the expansion for what your program is. Now, that being said, let's say your program runs from June 1 to June 30, but extra funds would allow you to run that program from July 1 to July 30 as well. So that means you can serve more program participants, or you can serve the ones that you're serving for a longer period of time. That is considered an expansion because you're serving that population for a longer period of time, which in the case of parents, I'm sure they'd be very appreciative. Can you prepay for something? For example, curriculum program for youth to continue on past the 3 months? The answer is yes. If the curriculum that you will be using starts in the summer and it just so happens that it continues into the fall and spring, that's fine. That's a jump that you've been able to get because you're starting those kids in the summer, so that is fine. Are there specific types of cost categories CSC Leon is more or less open to funding, e.g. personnel, capital projects, equipment, supplies, program costs? You will define all of that in your request. So your operating budget is going to show us how you're operating currently and how you're funded. Then your program budget will show us what you're requesting to be able to run the program or expand the program. Include all of those costs. We're looking at the whole picture. So we're not going to look and say, especially when you're talking about programs that people are helping to operate. So in many cases, camps, tutoring, care coordination, those are people. People are doing those jobs. So we would expect that there would be probably a higher personnel cost there. So fill it out the way that you need to fill it out. When I say be as truthful as possible, I don't mean that I expect people would not be truthful. I just mean shoot from the hip, tell us what you need. That's what I mean. Okay, next question. If there is a joint effort of programs seeking funding, will all be required to have individual liability or just the organization completing the application? Thank you. We will need to see proof of liability insurance from every entity that is involved in that application. So if there is an umbrella organization that is going to apply as an intermediary, and they are going to include organization A, well, their organization A, they're going to include a B, a C, and a D. We need to see the liability insurance for organization A, B, C, and D, because a best practice would say that all of you should be on each other's liability insurance so that you are all covered in case something happens with your participants or the people that you employ to do this job. I cannot stress that enough. If something happens, you want to make sure that you're covered. And then when we are awarded, if you are awarded, we will ask that CSC Leon be placed on each one of those liability insurance plans for the duration of your funding. And that is the last question I am seeing in here. Holly, I'm going to turn it back over to Holly here because she's going to stay on for a little while and let the chat stay open if you have questions. If you can't stay on, please use info and ask those questions so that we can make sure we include them in all of the questions. Again, just want to emphasize, please download the PDF and make sure you've got it, you know, all of your questions kind of ready. I mean, all of your answers and your submission ready so that when you go into the application, you can just move it right along. You can download the budget, get it all together. And listen, once you download the budget, feel free to keep that, especially if you don't have a budget template. You can have that available to do your budget. If you need technical assistance, we are here to help. We are not here to be like those professors that are trying to fail people. That is not what we're trying to do. This university, college, technical school is trying to make you successful. So whatever help you need, you let us know, and we will definitely get you that help. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Holly, and I sure appreciate all of you being on this morning. Holly, back to you.
Well, thank you guys for joining us. I'll just reiterate that she said everything that we need to say. We will be sending an email out to everyone who registered for yesterday or today. I'm letting you know when all of those resources are up and just a quick recap of what those resources are. You will need to visit the website to be able to download them and to have them in your inbox. That email will include a link to a survey that says, hey, I need technical assistance on A, B, or C. And then that will prompt us to schedule that. If there is a lot of technical assistance needed by multiple programs, we will have kind of just a couple of series of just very, very quick webinars, or we might be able to just provide you written technical assistance or a phone call to kind of walk through that. But that completing that survey really gives us documentation so that everything is completely transparent of who we're communicating with, who we're offering services to, and who's requesting those services. And with that, you're all free to go. If you do have additional questions, I'm going to leave the chat open that you can pop them in there. We won't answer them right now, but we will include them in that FAQs doc. All right, guys. Thanks everyone for being here. Bye. Hi, Janae and Willie. I see kind of Tim. I saw Mandy, Shabal. Hey, Corey and Janet. Gwen and Jojen, oh goodness. So nice to see people, isn't it, Jacinta? One of these days we'll be in person again. Right, I'm gonna leave it open for one more minute. So if you have another question, please get that dropped into the chat.